Hey guys, Corey with Faymus Media. Today, we're in Fayetteville, North Carolina at the Dogwood Festival. We're going to be taking a look at the 50mm 1.8G from Nikon. So today we're going to be looking at Nikon's 50mm 1.8G. We've already reviewed the 50mm 1.4G, but with the difference in price between the two, and them both being very close in low light capabilities, one complete stop, or not quite one complete stop, 2/3 of a stop, the 1.8G is quite a bit more affordable, especially if you're an amateur photographer. So we're going to compare the two lenses directly, but before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about a few of the specs that are different on paper. Number one, the 50mm 1.4G weighs about 281 grams, whereas the 1.8G weighs about 187 grams. So there's a little bit of weight difference between the two lenses. The 50mm 1.4 has 8 elements in 7 groups and 9 diaphragm blades, whereas the 50mm 1.8 only has 7 elements in 6 groups with 7 diaphragm blades. However, this is all just specs on paper, and it really doesn't mean anything until we actually get on the street and start doing some work with them. We're going to be using the 50mm 1.4G as of right now. We'll use the 1.8G in a few minutes. I'm going to take a few shots with this. We'll go back and forth, and after today, I'll do a little direct comparison on a whiteboard. We're going to be able to tell the exact differences, and I'll put them through some rigorous tests later on. But for now, let's enjoy the warmth and so I'm going to switch over to 1.4 on the aperture on the 50mm 1.4, which is the one thing that the 50mm 1.8 can't do. It gives you 2/3 of a stop extra light capability, and for that extra depth of field if you need it. Should have seen the way that guy looked at me. He looked at me like he's never seen a camera before in his life. He was so petrified. 50mm on the street really makes you work. You have to get up nice and close in order to get that intimate, tight portraiture on the street, which I do like, but I do like 85 as well. Depends on the style you're going for on the street. Some people say you can't use 85, but I do all the time. 50mm is the true workhorse of street photography lenses, though.
Let's get a smile out of you guys.
This is my YouTube channel. I'm in New York City. I do videos all over, so it'll be on the YouTube channel.
Well, the two best looking women right there, Southern Bells, they are awesome. They're our
Sweet.
wives, so you need to go take a picture.
We're gonna go bug his wife like he told me to do.
No, because technically we didn't trade.
You guys want a photo? Your husband sent us this way.
Oh, sure.
You guys want to get together? We'll take a photo of you guys together. I gave him my business card. It'll be on the YouTube channel. You get to see the photo in the video. I do instructional videos.
Wait a minute. She has her mouth full, so you know how that goes.
Right on.
All right, big smiles together. 1, 2.
Fantastic. Take care, guys. On the streets, it's really easy to work and get to know people. It's a really fun experience. Most people, almost all, will warm up the sight of a camera and they'll want their photo taken, but you will have those individuals that will not like it. And at that point, it's kind of up to your discretion how you want to handle that. So I'm going to go ahead and switch out my 50mm 1.4 in favor of the 50mm 1.8G. So we've got the 50mm 1.8G now on the camera. You really can feel the weight difference as this lens weighs just under 100 grams less. This is a 187 gram lens, whereas the 50mm 1.4 is 281 grams. And the fact that this only has 7 elements and 6 groups and only 7 diaphragm blades, so that means theoretically it'll have slightly less pleasing bokeh. Well, this lens is courtesy of another photographer, actually my mother, who I'm going to introduce to everyone on camera. She's in North Carolina and she's a photographer down here. And I'm actually borrowing her lens so I can review it and bring you guys more informative videos. You have anything you'd like to add before we get out of here?
No, let's get started.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to walk around and see how this lens performs. Of course, I'm going to start it at 1.8, which is the widest aperture the 50mm 1.8G goes. Surprisingly, the 50mm 1.8G is sharper at 1.8 than the 50mm 1.4 is. And there's almost no vignetting, which is a good thing. The 50mm 1.4G does indeed have a little bit of vignetting around the edges, which we'll see later during the test on the whiteboard. However, this lens performs very well for the price point. Yeah, check it out. I'll get another photo of you guys right there. If you guys want to get in for a real good photo, oh, sure. It'll be in the video and you guys will be able to check it out and link to it, and we'll do a full group one. At a wide angle shot like this, you would probably want to shoot her on f4. So we're continuing on with the 50mm 1.8G, and it's performing very well, vignetting to a minimum and surprisingly tack sharp at 1.8. This lens is a great bang for buck. So we're going to switch over to f2 to see how it performs, just like we did with the 1.4G lens. So we're still got the 50mm 1.8G on. It performs great, and this is a sub $300 lens. In fact, it's almost $200 cheaper than the 1.4. So you're gonna ask yourself, what does the $200 really get me? Is it gonna tell me everything's gonna be okay and give me free money and provide all the work for me? Is it gonna edit your photos for you? Well, I'm sorry to break the bad news. It's actually not going to do any of that. But the $200 will get you 2/3 of a stop low light capabilities, which is where that lens shines. More elements and a little bit smoother bokeh. But if you're on a budget or you're not a professional photographer and you don't need it, you can save $200 and get the 1.8G, and it'll perform very, very well. In fact, almost no difference at all unless you're shooting, of course, in the 1.4 or the 1.6 range, which, of course, the 1.8G can't do because it's a 1.8 lens. But it does provide great sharpness and very minimal vignetting, so it's a fantastic lens, and we're going to take just a few more photos with it. I'm starting to like it. It's also a little bit lighter, so it's easier to carry. However, professionals would never complain about weight, especially 100 grams. That's about the weight of 2 slices of bread. I mean, it's really nothing to worry about. We're going to switch over to 1.8 and let's put this lens to work. I'm really surprised at the performance that the 1.8G gives you. It's a really, really stunning lens for the price. I mean, where are you going to get a lens that gives you all the performance that this lens is going to give you at $276? I mean, it practically gives itself to you for almost nothing. I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera on my videographer. And of course my assistant. And of course I'm going to take a picture of my mother, who's also a photographer here. Here comes the police department. Supporting a good cause here at the Dogwood Festival. Excellent. As you can see, the festivities are pretty awesome, and it's a great place to test the 50mm 1.8G. I'm going to shoot over to f4 to take a good shot here. My overall impressions are pretty good on this lens. Should take a little view around and show you guys around a little bit. Enjoy the view. Hey you, focus right here. There we go. Welcome back. Hope you guys enjoyed that view. We're going to go ahead and take a walk to the last block of the Dogwood Festival. That's a great view right there. So we found a couple on the street. I'm going to give them a little taste of some of the photography I do, and you can see how I'm going to pose this couple here and get a photo of them, which I'm going to provide them a link online where they can access their photo and order any prints of it they may want and use it on their Facebook and whatnot. I'm going to show you how to do a pose right here on the street. Can you put that photo just right down here? We're going to have you step on the right side of her. Maybe we'll get off the street back there a little bit. Come this way. There we go. You're going to put your right arm behind her back, your left arm behind his back. Nice and close. There we go, just like that. Now you're going to put your teeth together. Put your hand on his shoulder. All right, just like that. Bring it down for me. Faces together. Lean forward. Look right up there. There you go, just like that. Look out, wait for each other a little bit. Faces touching. There you go. This way, now close. There you go. Lean forward. Chins up. There you go. Just like that. Excellent. Looking right at me. Big smiles.
Wow.
Like that?
Yeah. Wow.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Of course, let me show you the side right here, which I forgot to do, is of course your manual focus and your manual auto override, which will allow you to manual focus like all Nikon lenses, but still autofocus. Now, the autofocus on this lens is pretty darn good for its cost. Now, it's not as good as the 24-70. I mean, why would it be? This is $276 lens versus $2,000, but it's right up there with the 1.4G, which is well over $400, and it's very silent. In fact, I'm going to say something that's brutally honest, and I don't want to get anybody upset, but this lens does focus just as quickly, if not quicker, and smoother and more silently than Canon's 85 1.2 does, and that's an L lens. That's saying a lot. The autofocus on this lens is superb. This lens is a steal. Buying this lens for $276 is like you going into a camera store and stealing the lens, because it does so much for you for such a cheap price. How you guys doing? We're gonna get a photo. This guy has all kinds of homemade hot sauces and custom everything. We're gonna get a nice photo of him at his booth here at the Dogwood Festival.
We have rubs and we have barbecue sauce. We have salsa.
Corey at Faymus Media.
I'm Lindsay.
How you doing, Lindsay?
Nice to meet you.
You guys want a photo of you guys together? Cool. One, two. That's right. And the 1.8 is really coming in handy, of course, because the lighting condition right now is kind of dark. So let's take a look at the results from the vignetting test, and as you can see at 1.8 and 2.0, noticeable vignetting in the corners, but that's expected because we're shooting wide open. By 2.8, there's less vignetting, but it's still noticeable in the corners, just not as bad. By f4, a majority of the vignetting is now gone, but there's still trace amounts. By 5.6, you need a magnifying glass to find it. f8, all the way through f16, crystal clear, no vignetting whatsoever. Isn't it so awesome how well this lens performs for less than $300? So let's see how these lenses stack up against each other. We're shooting at f1.4 on the 50mm 1.4, and there's more vignetting here than there is on the 50mm 1.8 while shooting at 1.8. By the time we get both lenses here together side by side at 1.8, you can see the 1.4 lens has slightly more vignetting. At f2, it's still pretty much the same thing. The 1.8 lens has slightly less vignetting. By 2.8, they're about neck and neck, although I still think the 1.8 lens slightly edges out the 1.4. It's almost unnoticeable though. By the time we get to f4 and f8, they're neck and neck. Certain images here do look like the 1.8 is slightly sharper. I'm not sure if this is the case, as I didn't really do a sharpness test, but it's pretty amazing, and it goes to show you how well the 1.8 lens performs for such an amazing price. The Nikon 50mm 1.8G has got such a high performance to cost ratio. In fact, this lens is nothing short of brilliant. And when you own this lens, you'll feel like you stole it because of how well it performs and how little it actually costs. It's devastation to the competition to have a lens perform so well for so cheap. In fact, the 50mm 1.8 performs better than a lot of lenses I've used that are over $1,000. Forget about Nifty 50, they should call this lens the Thrifty 50, and in my opinion is the most cost-effective prime on the market today. So, how does the 50mm 1.8G really perform? Well, number one, the 1.4G is a great lens, but the 1.8G is half the price. The only thing the 1.8G can't do is the 1.4 and the 1.6 aperture. I mean, why would it? It's a 1.8. That was a joke, just kidding. But in any case, the 1.8 lens is actually a tad bit sharper than the 1.4 is at 1.8. But by f2, they both perform reasonably the same. Where the big thing comes into play is the fact that the 1.8 is about half the price. So if you're an amateur photographer or aspiring photographer, this is probably the lens you should go for, unless you need the extra stop of light, or the 2/3 of a stop of light. Where in my case, I'm a professional wedding photographer, I like to have the extra 2/3 of a stop of light as I need it. However, for most individuals, the 1.8 lens will perform very, very well, and for the price point, it's almost like you're stealing the lens. I almost feel like I went into a camera store and they were closed and robbed and blind for the lens because it's so cheap. If you have a 50mm 1.4 and you're thinking about getting another 50mm as you're shooting with 2 cameras, or you just want another great lens, get it. If you don't have a 50mm lens, get it. It's a really, really good lens. It's fantastic. If you want to purchase any of the gear I review, use the link down there in the information box, please guys, to support the channel and to keep more reviews coming. I'm also going to have links down there for the D4 if you want to purchase that. It's a fantastic camera, and of course all the gear that I review. I'm Corey with Faymus Media here from the Dogwood Festival in North Carolina. Don't forget guys, subscribe, and of course all the links to the gear I review are going to be around the screen right about now. Please support the channel once again guys, and I'll have more videos coming at you real soon. I'm Corey with Faymus Media, and happy shooting. Hey, forgot to mention one thing. Buy the lens. It's really good. In fact, it's so good I can't talk. You'll thank me later.